What is going on, everybody? It is week 4 already. I hope you guys have had a blast with NFT Draft. We are just getting started. Just a reminder to make sure that you go and not only subscribe to Dynasty Dorks Fantasy Football here on YouTube, as well as Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts, but make sure you go to NFTDraft.io, follow our YouTube channel, make sure you are joining the Discord channel, and make sure you are entering as many tournaments as you possibly can. So this week, again, we are going to talk about the spreads. We're going to talk about the streams, and we're going to talk about the stacks. So again, for those of you, this is the first time. Why is it important to talk about spreads? Well, spreads really gives us information on what are going to be the high scoring games, and we're also going to look at what are going to be the low scoring games. Typically, your low scoring games are going to have bad offenses and good defenses. And normally, your high scoring games are going to have 2 good offenses. And sometimes that is 2 bad defenses. You're going to want a lot of parts of those games and a lot of pieces of those points. When it comes to your stacks, there's different ways you can do stacks. You can do quarterback, receiver, tight end, quarterback, receiver, or just a quarterback receiver. But, when you get a touchdown that's thrown by your quarterback, caught by your receiver, you're getting double the production, and it helps you shoot up the leaderboard. And when you're looking at your stacks, you're looking at those high spread games, and you can stack a lot of people in the same game from the same team, especially if you feel like it's going to be a high scoring game with a lot of possessions. Then you're going to want to have people in that game. And then when it comes down to your streams, injuries happen. They're a part of the game. And in these tournaments, sometimes you want to have something that makes your lineup a little bit contrarian. If everybody plays the same players, when those players score, no one's going to move. No one's going to go up. No one's going to go down. But if you have that 1 or 2 streaming guys that no one else is playing, and they have a big week or they score, it's going to shoot you right up to the top of the leaderboard. And that's the kind of things that we want to talk about today, so we can get you guys that edge over your opponents. We have no bye weeks yet. Bye weeks do not start until week 6. Just want to make sure everybody is aware. As far as the bye weeks, that's when every team gets 1 bye week, and every team is those players are all resting that week. So if you have cards of all of the Los Angeles Rams or all the Kansas City Chiefs, and you've been playing them over and over and over, when they have a bye, you're going to need to pivot. When people are injured and there's bye weeks, you're going to have to pivot. And that's where it's using these streamers not only to give you, a little bit of the contrarian play, but it's to give you options that you usually would not play, but you're playing them because they're in a good matchup. So to start off, the first thing we are going to talk about is the spreads. So the highest scoring games on the slate are Arizona at Los Angeles Rams. You're going to see a lot of scoring. There's so many pieces that you're going to want a part of. You're going to want Kyler Murray. You're going to want DeAndre Hopkins. So that's the QB1 and wide receiver 1 of the Arizona Cardinals. You're going to want the wide receiver 2, 3, and possibly 4 of the Arizona Cardinals. All good plays. And you're looking at the Los Angeles Rams. You have the tight end 1, the QB1, the wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, all over the place. I wouldn't play these defenses this week, personally. The kickers could both be in play, but the defenses are not slated to have good weeks based on the fact they're playing against very good offenses. The running backs for both teams, I don't know if I'm really excited about them. You have the backup to the backup for Los Angeles. They are now down to their 3rd string, Sony Michel, unless Darrell Henderson plays. And if Darrell Henderson plays, you might want to play the Los Angeles Rams number 2 card, which would then be Sony Michel, who would be backing up Henderson at a much lower rate that most likely would get a lot of reps with Henderson being limited if he plays. Then you look over at Arizona. Chase Edmonds is getting a lot of work in the passing game, but he's not getting a significant amount of carries. So in this game, Edmonds could be a good play. If it's a high-scoring game with a lot of passing and not a lot of running, that goes Edmonds over Connor, even though Connor is the greater value. The next is Kansas City and Philadelphia. This one also has this game heavily slated towards Kansas City. So it appears that Philadelphia is going to have a lot of points, and yes, they might. Philadelphia QB1 was perfectly fine, even though the Eagles were blown out this week. He was able to put up over 300 yards passing, over 30 yards rushing, had 2 touchdowns to go with his 2 interceptions. Even though he played poorly, he had a great fantasy week, and it's fantasy football, so we don't care about the real performance. When it comes down to the receivers in this game, I'm not interested on the receivers on the Philadelphia side. The tight ends, it's really hard to predict. Goddard had the yards, but Ertz had the touchdown, probably avoiding pretty much all the Philadelphia players except for that Philadelphia QB1 card. But as regards to Kansas City, you can play the running back one, you can play the QB1, play the wide receiver one, the tight end one, and we'll talk about it later with my stacks. You can play all of them. The question is, do you play the wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3? That's up to you. For me, it's really hard to throw in the wide receiver 2 card, even in Kansas City. It's just so hit or miss that it is a Hail Mary play. And in a high-scoring game like this, seems like the time to play it. It's just, again, it's been a risk because it's missed more than it's hit over the last more than 1 year, over the last 3 seasons. The next games that are high scoring on the slate are the Browns at Minnesota, Las Vegas at the San Diego, and you got Seattle at San Francisco. So Raiders and Chargers, 52.5. Seattle and San Francisco, 52.5. Cleveland at Minnesota, 53.5. You got points all over. So Cleveland and Minnesota, Stefanski going to play against Zimmer, his old coach, his old mentor. That should be fun. So Minnesota definitely has, they've done their homework and they know a lot about Cleveland's offense and their coach, Kevin Stefanski. But the defense is still pretty poor. And Cleveland, as far as the running game, they have one of the best running attacks in the league, if not the best. And all they do is they run the ball down your throat. They run it with such success that you have to change your defense. You have to defend the run. And that's when they do a play action, fake the run, and then they pass the ball, whether it's to a tight end, whether it's to a running back, or whether it's to a receiver. Jarvis Landry is still out. So the wide receiver 2 in Cleveland will be Donovan Peoples-Jones, and the wide receiver 3 will be most likely Rashad Higgins or Anthony Schwartz. Wide receiver 1 is Odell Beckham Jr., and you can play that card this week. You can play the Cleveland wide receiver 1 with confidence. You can play the running back 1 or 2 with confidence, and you can play the quarterback 1 with confidence. I like the Cleveland RB2 is probably the best value of all the cards on the slate. And Cleveland defense, you can play them, but again, Minnesota's offense has been really, really good, and you probably have better plays. Minnesota, even with Dalvin Cook out, Alexander Madison as the RB1 played really well. You can play all 3 receivers. You can play the tight end, and you can play the quarterback. The only thing I would be a little hesitant is the wide receiver 3. The wide receiver 3 and the tight end in Minnesota, they're really going to cannibalize each other. So the tight end is going to have good weeks when the wide receiver 3 doesn't, and the wide receiver 3 is going to have good weeks when the tight end doesn't. But what's not going to change, the wide receiver 1 and the wide receiver 2 in Minnesota need to be in your lineup. You play them every single week. You set it. You forget it. Don't worry about it. You don't have to watch the game. You just know they played well. As far as the Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers, San Diego for NFT sake, there's guys you can play all over the field. Wide receiver 1, 2, and 3 for Las Vegas are all in the cards. I like the wide receiver 3 the best because of the value and the PPR production. The tight end 1, the QB 1, and the RB1 are all safe cards. The RB2 for Las Vegas has a safe floor. So he's not going to have 20 points, but he's pretty much gotten you 10 points every single week. So don't forget about that Las Vegas Raiders RB2 card. Then you have the defense. I probably wouldn't play them this week, but then you have Los Angeles. You got the RB1, the QB1, the wide receiver and wide receiver 1 and 2. Play all of them. Probably not playing anybody else in that game for San Diego. So the games with the low spreads: Detroit and Chicago, 42.5. New York Giants and New Orleans, 43.5. Indianapolis and Minnesota, 43.5. Baltimore and Denver, 44.5. Tennessee and the Jets, 45. So again, this is where you're finding your defenses, and you're going to find one or two players that you're going to play. But most of these games you're really trying to avoid, especially when you're talking about stacking and you're talking about upside. There just doesn't seem like there's going to be a lot of production here. Detroit and Chicago, the Detroit running backs have been really good, and you can play them. I'm not playing the receivers. The quarterback I'm probably not playing, but I will play the tight end, TJ Hawkinson, TE1 card. You can play both running backs, RB1 or 2 for Detroit. Chicago, oh my goodness, this was a mess last week. This was a mess. The running back had a bad day. The quarterback had a bad day. So everyone had a bad day. You didn't see any production at all. This was one of the lowest offensive outputs that we've seen in a century. 1.1 yards a play. Back when people didn't even know how to throw a football and they weren't even wearing helmets, they had better offensive production. The game plan was awful. The execution from the players was awful. This was one of the worst performances that we've seen in a long time. There's only one way up, and they're playing the Lions. But again, with all the money on the table, probably not going to risk it. I would rather play other options. But Chicago and Detroit, we'll see if they hit that over. Chicago has Allen Robinson. I'm fading. They have Justin Fields or Nick Foles or Andy Dalton at quarterback. I'm staying away. If they don't know who their quarterback is, a great coach said, if you don't know who your quarterback is, that means you don't have a quarterback. And the running back, 1 for Chicago, I'm avoiding due to the price. I just think there's better options in the slate. I'm avoiding all Chicago. The Giants, the New York Blue, and the New Orleans Saints. So the Giants have many injuries. The wide receiver 1 is injured. He is going to probably play, but he's limited. The wide receiver 2 and 3 are both out. So you could see Kadarius Toney and John Ross fill in. Colin Johnson most likely will be the wide receiver 2. Actually, wide receiver 3. He played a lot last week whenever Sterling Shepard went down. So it would be Kenny Golladay as a wide receiver 1. Darius Slayton, he is possibly out. So him and Shepard both out. That would move Colin Johnson to the 2 and would move Kadarius Toney to the 3. Kadarius Toney could play really well in the slot if he gets the Sterling Shepard role. But Evan Ingram is a name to watch, where Evan Ingram could have a good week. New York Blue tight end 1. He dropped a few balls and had a few close targets last week. Look for him to be someone that you can target and stream this week. We'll talk about him in a bit. And then you have Baltimore and Denver, 2 good defenses, 2 good offenses, but other than Lamar Jackson, both these teams have more of a rushing approach. They both want to run the football. I mean, you run the football, it drains the clock a lot faster because every time an incomplete pass happens, the clock stops. So the clock goes pretty quick, and there's less plays in these games, which means less opportunities for points. So that's why Denver and Baltimore have such a low-scoring game. You can still play the pieces on here. Baltimore QB1 and tight end 1 are both good plays, both pretty cheap. The wide receiver 1 in Baltimore had a really close game last week to having a huge game. And then Denver, I like Denver's wide receiver 2, Tim Patrick. I think he's a good play. And then the tight end 1. So I'm playing both tight ends. I'm going to play the wide receiver 2 for Denver, wide receiver 1 for Baltimore. And then you can play both quarterbacks. Lamar Jackson is always a play, and Denver QB1 is a streamer. Indianapolis and Miami. not a lot of stuff going on there. Jonathan Taylor has been very quiet this year, the RB1. I like the RB2 for Indianapolis better than the RB1 just because of the price, and honestly, the production has been better. Miami, you're really trying to avoid, the running backs are really really hard to predict right now. But there was a lot of targets, a lot of passing volume from the offense under Jacoby Brissett. So you should see that. And all the targets that Jalen Waddle got, all the targets that Mike Gesicki got, you can play them. So wide receiver 1, tight end 1 for the actually wide receiver 2 and tight end 1 for the Miami Dolphins. I'm okay with playing this week. And then as far as Tennessee, they have A.J. Brown and Julio Jones both limited. You need to watch the practice reports. That's going to have a big effect on what's going on there. Julio Jones most likely plays. A.J. Brown, if he doesn't, you're going to see a lot of targets go to Julio, and you're going to see a lot of Derrick Henry in that game. So let's talk about our stacks. We talked about what games can be high scoring, what games can be low scoring. Buffalo gets Houston. You're going to want Josh Allen and any of those receivers, the wide receiver 1, 2, or 3. Pick your poison. All 3 were good last week. I'm going to go with the 1. I'm going to pay up and get Stephon Diggs. I think Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs have huge weeks. Josh Allen was the QB1 overall last week, and all 3 of the top receivers for the Bills were top 24 plays last week. Cole Beasley gets a lot of production in the intermediate stuff. You get your all-around good receiver, Stephon Diggs, and then your deep threat is Emmanuel Sanders. So I would rank it Diggs, Sanders, Beasley. But Beasley does have the great value in NFT, and that's where you can take Josh Allen and then pick 2 of those guys. Kansas City, you can play the quarterback, you can play the receiver and the tight end, or quarterback, receiver, and tight end. They get Philadelphia. It's a lock. It's a lock. Even if a ton of people are playing them, you have to do it. You have to play Kansas City QB1 with the wide receiver and TE1. Even though you got to pay up for it, it's worth it. Tampa Bay, they get New England. New England should know Tom Brady more than anything, but Tom Brady is on a mission to destroy the Patriots, and he is going to do it this weekend. I would play Tom Brady QB1 for Tampa with the tight end 1 for Tampa. I would also play him with the wide receiver 2 from Tampa, which would be Chris Godwin. You also have the wide receiver 3. It's still a great play, so you could pair him up with any of those 3 or any of those 2. San Diego, pick your poison, wide receiver 1 or 2 with a quarterback 1. San Diego should have a good game against the Las Vegas Raiders. Las Vegas Raiders, you can play the quarterback 1 and TE1 as a stack. I think you're going to get a lot of passing volume in a high-scoring game, and you should see 10-plus targets for their tight end. Derek Carr has been slinging it. He's been going all over the field. He's utilized 3 receivers or more and been able to prop them up with good production for Renfro, Edwards, and for Ruggs. And Waller has been good as well. Look for them to go and spread it out. Derek Carr is going to have another good week, and look for Darren Waller to be a top 5 play. And if you're looking for a deeper play, a cheaper play, you could go with the Detroit, QB1, TE1, or the Denver QB1 and wide receiver 1. So your streams, again, you got a bunch of injuries. Your quarterback has a bad matchup. You're looking to find a way to pivot for your QB2 or your tight end or your defense. So quarterbacks that I want to bring up, Carolina Panthers QB1. So not only does he have Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore, he's also got Terrace Marshall, and he also has a good matchup this week. So go and play, play Sam Darnold as one of your streamers this week. He's a perfect quarterback too. Has a little bit of sneaky rushing upside, but he's just got such good weapons, such good play caller. And Chuba Hubbard filled in great without Christian McCaffrey. Look for them to do well. And then his new tight end, the tight end 1 now for the Carolina Panthers is Tommy Tremble. He's a rookie out of Notre Dame. He's very athletic. They just traded Dan Arnold, so he is now on the Jacksonville Jaguars. He will be their tight end 1 starting soon. Washington football team. Yeah, Taylor Heineke is playing really well. He's he's a very athletic kid. He has no fear, and he has some good weapons. Not only does he have Terry McLaurin and Logan Thomas, but he's got J.D. McKissick and Antonio Gibson. Last week, he was a top 10 play. He's been a top 10 play every single week that he started. I'm playing him. You can play the Washington football team quarterback, and it's a pretty cheap play, one of the cheaper plays out of the quarterbacks in NFTs. Denver, another one. Teddy Bridgewater, he's a solid QB2. He may not win you a week, but he's not going to lose it. And he's a perfect one when you're going for, you're going to pair Patrick Mahomes or someone with a huge upside with a Teddy Bridgewater. This one is the risky play. I'm going to say it right now, but you could see Justin Fields go out there and surprise a lot of people. They're playing Detroit. They're going to want to run the ball with him, and you could see them, even if it's not a pretty game from Chicago, unleash Justin Fields on the ground just to get some more confidence in him and get him more involved. If Justin Fields plays, you can play the Chicago QB1. As long as it's not, if it's Justin Fields, you can play him. It's gonna be a risky play. Not a lot of people are gonna do it, but if he has a good game, you're gonna be one of the only people to play him, and it should benefit you. And then Derek Carr, we talked about it. He's very much like Teddy Bridgewater, but I think he's even better. He's been spreading the ball out. He's going to be in a high-scoring game. He's playing really good football. And look for Derek Carr when you're, putting your lineups in. Streams, Minnesota. We talked about it earlier. The TE1, you can play him. It's just a little bit more risky compared to the top tight ends. Buffalo tight end 1. They get Houston. We a lot of points. Had a great touchdown last week. In Pittsburgh tight end 1 is Pat Freiermuth, and with them throwing the ball short and not pushing the ball down the field, you've seen a lot of targets go to Pat Freiermuth and Najee Harris. And Deontay Johnson is most likely out this week. You also are most likely going to have Juju Smith-Schuster out as well. As far as defenses this week, you have Cincinnati at Jacksonville Thursday night. Cincinnati should be a good play. Jacksonville's let up multiple sacks in every single game. And with Cincinnati, they've been able to cause some turnovers, be pretty they've definitely overachieved so far this year, and they're playing really good football. Buffalo gets Houston. Davis Mills. Buffalo defense has been getting at it. They've been getting after the quarterback. Play them. Tennessee. Tennessee is one that not the best defense, but a matchup that you're going to want to attack because they get the Jets this week. So look at them to be someone you target. With Mekhi Becton out, the Jets have just fallen apart. And look for them to get all over Zach Wilson, cause a few turnovers, and get you some points. Kansas City. Kansas City's not been one of the defenses you've wanted to play this year. They haven't put up a lot of production. This week they get Philly. Philly was terrible last week. The Dallas Cowboys were all over them. Look for them to be a play this week. Detroit, we talked about it with Justin Fields. Justin Fields, one of the biggest struggles with him was the offensive line. He's got a great arm. He's got legs. He can do it. He has some weapons. But the offensive line is just terrible. And Detroit is a sneaky play this week after Chicago let up 9 sacks last week. The last one will be Indianapolis. They get Miami. They get Jacoby Brissett. Brissett, he's let up some sacks both games that he's played this year. And Miami is just, their offensive line is subpar. So if you guys have any questions, please DM me on Twitter or on the Discord channel, Dynasty Dorks Fantasy Football. I want to wish everybody good luck this week, and thank you for your time.